I'm Zara Watkins, and we're here with Deliberate Solos. We're a networking group of solo attorneys and the business professionals who assist us. Yuri Starikov has been one of us, part of our group for many years, almost back to the beginning. He was one of the first members to come to our group. And over the last few months, we've been having our fellow Deliberate Solos give presentations on the changing landscape in their area of law. And Yuri is a customs and international trade attorney, solo, and used to have an office at JFK, which I think is really cool. But he's going to talk to us about a very important issue that all of us are thinking about these days, which is the changing landscape in customs and international trade.
All right, so thank you, Zara. So I guess a little bit about me, right? I pretty much been doing this stuff all my adult life. I started out when I was an undergrad as an intern, writing newsletters for Boeing back in University of Washington in Seattle. And after that, I got an internship at a customs brokerage software company as an analytical intern. Then I started working for freight forwarders and importers. That led me to a conversation with one of the company's in-house counsel. He said, just go get a law degree. So after a while, I worked there, I took my LSATs, and I got my law degree. And after I graduated, it was fun to do other stuff too. So I've done criminal law stuff, I've done commercial litigation, I still do, right, related to international trade. So, but I was kind of shifted back because of my past. It kind of like hunted me down. So it drew me back to customs area of the law, and this is what I continue to do to the same day. So that's kind of like where I am. So I really appreciate Deliberate Solos and Zara inviting me to do the speech, because this is something that if you turn on any news channel, you probably see our president or other officials talking about tariffs, talking about trade wars, talking about making America great again, and that this is the key to or at least a primary key to making America great again. So, but what we see on the news sometimes does not reflect the stuff on the ground, because a lot of people are fearful, a lot of people are uncertain about how they're going to do about their business. A lot of folks that run companies, including large companies, they are used to predictability, because over the past 30 to 40 years, that's the way it has been. We have a supply chain. Yes, it is diversified. Yes, the supply chain is spans out across many countries. But at least they knew that something which needs to be here in a month will be here in a month, and they could calculate what they call a landed cost for this, and that helped them predict the businesses, predict hiring practices, and predict investment, borrowing, and many other things that come as a part of being a business owner, small or large. So that came to kind of abrasive, not abrasive, but that came not to a halt, but that came to a slowdown when our President Donald Trump took office, because one of the first things he did, and before I came here, I downloaded I reviewed the White House memorandum, right? So Trump was sworn in as a 47th president on January 21st. On January 20th, Trump issued a memorandum to secretaries, all secretaries, called America First Trade Policy. It's available on whitehouse.gov if anyone is interested. And they focus, Trump directs secretaries to focus on, quote, unfair and unbalanced trade. And here's what's going on. Those are the big words. And section 2 of the memo says the following: secretaries of commerce, in consultation with the Secretary of Treasury and USTR, trade representative, shall investigate the causes of our country's large and persistent annual trade deficit in goods. So focus on the trade deficit and focus on persistent annual disbalances. And he talks about national security implications, economics, so very broadly speaking, but that was the day before he became president. So I think this is an extremely important topic, because what to follow, the roller coaster ride that follows his presidency. If anyone watched this swearing-in ceremony, you probably recall right after he was sworn in, he went to business right away. He said, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to issue executive orders, and this is going to be done pretty much right within the next few hours. So that tells you that he hit Donald Trump hit off the ground running, because probably of his experience in the first term, where he learned that it's better to, there is a saying, it's better to ride at the town on the shoulders of your enemy, right? In this case, it would be probably Democrats, right? Because there was a lot of sometimes pretty nasty exchanges on both sides of the aisle. Yeah. We're not gonna be political here. We're just gonna talk about how it went down and how it affected the people who are stakeholders in the trade, and the people, just the regular people. But before I think going on this roller coaster, I just wanted to give a brief historical context of how it happened and how did we get to be where we are today. Because a lot of folks, especially on the corporate side, they call me up and they say, where are we going? What's going on? How do we do this? And my usual answer to the executive as well to anyone else would say, let's look at the history, because if you know what's going on with the history of how we got to be where we are, it kind of helps you to see what is about to happen. So that way you, at the very least, you can sleep better at night, because anxiety usually comes from the lack of knowledge, not from the knowledge itself and being able to do something about it. So history, I think in the context of international trade, I think the good starting point is July 1944. Conference that took place about 5 hours. We're in New York, so it took about 5 hour drive from here in a little town called Bretton Woods. 1944, the war with Nazis still going. United States and its allies, which included mostly primarily Great Britain and the Soviet Union, were still fighting on the battlefields. Japanese, I don't think Japanese have surrendered, signed a surrender at that time, but already knowing the outcome, people from about 44 nations came together to this little town in New Hampshire to discuss the new order of what is going to be. So Bretton Woods created several institutions that still exist today. One of them you may have heard of it is IMF, International Monetary Fund. Another institution would be International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, known as World Bank. IMF creates funding for the countries that have sometimes financial collapse. World Bank usually does infrastructure projects, financing. But for us, what's important is it also created a third line item, which was the internationalization of the dollar, of US dollar. The Great Britain was a superpower that, as a result of World War II, lost its status. And Soviet Union, although it came to a quick recovery, it still wasn't in a place to really do well. So United States, by that time, was close to about half of the world's GDP, gross domestic product, which is cost of goods and services produced. And it fared well because it wasn't really invaded inland. Yes, Hawaiian theater was there. There was a Pacific theater, but that was still not the same as, for example, occupied territories in the Soviet Union. So, dollar, it was agreed by many nations, including the Soviet Union, was to replace the British pound, and it was to become the currency, what they call a fiat currency, the currency to which all countries look for international exchange to affect the international trade, to engage in international trade.
Did you say that was fiat?
Fiat, yeah, fiat. Fiat usually refers to the car. Yeah, I have a fiat. It took effect through the convertibility guarantees in Bretton Woods, and the United States, because it had world's largest gold reserves at the time, including the gold reserves of other nations because of the situation because of the war, right? And also because of production, because of many other things, but it had largest by the time gold reserves. It agreed to peg its dollar in 1944 to the $35 per troy ounce. Anyone knows what the troy ounce of gold is today?
A Krugerrand.
How much?
A Krugerrand.
Well, I went to the Business Insider. It was trading for 3,000.
Oh, what do you call it? The spot price of gold? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, Krugerrand's a gold coin and it weighs 1 troy ounce. It has no numismatic value, but it serves as bullion. So anybody who's interested in.
So that's a good point. So for those who are into for those folks who are into the history, I started from Bretton Woods, right? But if we go a few years back, we do have the Great Depression, right? And President Roosevelt issued executive order confiscating gold of the people.
Right.
And a lot of people, a lot of old-timers still cannot forgive him for that. The government paid back, but it was criminalized. You could not go to your bank slot and without IRS agent.
Right.
And that affects, unless you have like some personal jewelry, because a lot of people at the time, when people actually had savings,
Right.
a lot of the savings were in gold. So, yeah, but $35 per troy ounce was nation to nation guarantee, so that it had some stability. So we have an established international trade platform for financial side, right? 1994. Fast forward three years more, you have another institution formed, which is called GATT, General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. That took place in 1947, and that system established, the idea for the system was to lower trade barriers and establish some kind of nomenclature, which is today known as harmonized tariff schedule, right? Here it would be harmonized tariff schedule of the United States, pretty much everything from paper to this to anything tangible. You have a signed number, and that number is connected to the tariff, so you know how much duties you pay, but it does also many other things. So, so that was general agreement on tariff of trade, established in 1947. Fast forward to 1995, it was converted to the, in January 1995, it was converted to the World Trade Organization, because there were several negotiation rounds, and the World Trade Organization is what we know today as stands on shoulders of the general agreement of tariff of trade. So now you have dollar as an international currency of finance. You have stability because it is pegged to the gold. And you also have a system for the world that ensures that you have some kind of uniformity and predictability, which is extremely important, especially after calamities which the world went through back in the day. Now, the calamities, what many people hope for, would those institutions solve, did not last very long. In 1965, President Charles de Gaulle made, it's on YouTube, so just de Gaulle speech, taking gold out. A French president, also a general, also a gentleman who took France out of NATO, which was a very bold move at the time. So France was, it is now part of North Atlantic Treaty Organization, which is a military organism, right? Now it took it out for some time, which I don't think he was forgiven for because of the student protests and other political movement. They just put few dents, but for international trade purposes, he made a scandal. He sent a couple of French Navy ships over to here off the coast of Manhattan and said, okay, Bretton Woods, you United States guarantee $35 per troy ounce. We have all your paper because the economy was getting dollarized by then, right? And it was getting more and more dollarized. We take your paper and give us some gold, please. So United States government didn't take it well, but agreement is an agreement, right? So they gave French their gold. Other countries were looking at that scenario. I think Germany, United Kingdom, and like, well, yeah, that makes sense because that amount of dollars outside of United States in such a huge quantity that we maybe perhaps we want the gold back, right? So that was 1965, French 1965-66, right? Was a French scandal. Then United States, for probably reasons that it didn't have that much gold, as much as it caused those dollar bills going around the world for the trade purposes. They decided. So Nixon, in I believe August 15th, 1973, Nixon comes out and says, "We're going to take a pause. No more." No more exchanges for gold. So that pause, that was August 1973. That pause still continues to this day. So in a way, it was the first default of the United States on its obligations, its financial obligations to the world. In a sense, by default, what I mean is where it said it will honor that $35 per ounce. No. So Nixon made a grand announcement, which was a boom to a lot of financial institutions, because now they were no longer tied, at least officially, not de facto. De facto, they were probably not printing US dollars without looking back at its gold reserves obligations a long time ago, and we still do not know because the audit has not been done. There were questions to do the audit, right? And one of the interesting things over this Trump administration will be whether or not he will be able to audit Federal Reserve for whatever amount of money it has and audit for reserves of gold that are held in Fort Knox, for example, as well as here in Manhattan, because those are two of the largest gold depository in the United States, Fort Knox and here in Manhattan.
Where is it in Manhattan?
Federal Reserve?
In the Federal Reserve?
Yeah, there is, for those who are curious, there is a National Geographic video. They actually allowed some folks from National Geographic side to, maybe Discovery Channel, I think National Geographic though, they allowed them in so they could take a picture of the process. So, now, 1973, you have a situation where you realize the alchemist's dream, right? You could literally make gold out of paper, right? No more meets and bounds, but for what they call the pegged or floating exchange rate. So it was no longer tied to the gold, it was tied to the targeted rate of exchange, and that new system, or rather than change from the Bretton Woods system, came to be known as either Jamaica Accords or Jamaica system, simply because it was finalized in around 1976, so it took 3 years, several rounds of negotiations, how we were going to do it. I believe Gerald Ford was an active participant. I looked at some records. He was a big, took a big role in making it happen. But at the end of the day, what you have is you have no gold standard anymore, and this is what we have to this day. So when Donald Trump says causes of our country's large and persistent annual trade deficit in goods, you cannot really look at it just in goods. You have to really look at it at the big disbalance of dollars, which are now backed by what? By the full faith and credit of the United States government. So that's for some it may not be enough. It is not enough, definitively not enough, for example, for states such as Russia, because the Congress, I think, froze the money and did for its actions that the Russian Federation took toward Ukraine. Other things which you believe are serve the best interests of the United States, and there's nothing wrong with that, really. If you can do that, why not, right? But what the collateral effect is, it creates a disbalance with which we live still to this day. So Donald Trump, just by focusing on tariffs, may also need to focus on the volume of currency that is being floating around there, that is really has very loose connection to what's going on the ground. Because creation of money, right, should correlate to the GDP, or value of goods and services produced. But if you have tons of money floating around for whatever reasons, it's very difficult for you to say, okay, this is a just price. But this is a system that has been developing for some time, since 1973, right? And this is not new. This destabilization came as a part of this development. Now, going back a little bit, going back to the 1960s, on the United States side, also not everything was good. The January 1961, Eisenhower delivers that famous military-industrial complex speech. That was the first speech by highest public official, who recognized there is a problem. Before him, if I'm going back to my constitutional law class, I think it was Madison who spoke of factions, and Jefferson who spoke of money-making corporations and danger that lures behind those powerful interests. So a lot of time has passed by, and finally Eisenhower he did it in January, right before he left office. And Eisenhower is a tough guy, right? He was the supreme commander of the Allied forces. He knows, he's seen a lot. And for him to come out and say this is really a brave thing to do. But he waited almost until January, until last month in his office. So we have a recognition on an official level, right, that there is something wrong inside the home. Then, of course, we have the scandals. One of the scandals, I believe, Watergate, that left Nixon out. And you have the rise of what's known today as corporatocracy. So essentially, it's the interests, the corporate interests of the people, money corporations, individuals. They take various forms to achieve whatever those individuals or interests believe is best for them. And you can kind of see that because back in the day, those who like military history, look at the careers of generals and admirals from the World War II, they retire, they get a nice country home, and they live a nice retired life. Today's military leaders, they usually became involved in a concept of revolving door, where they become advisors and consultants to the private entities within our nation. So this is nothing to be surprised of, and the question here is, as we can see, as it applies here to the trade, is how is it going to be, how easy it is going to be for Donald Trump to achieve what he needs to achieve. And we also must keep in mind that those powerful factions using or powerful corporations using the term of Jefferson, what is going on within Trump's administration is which side is Trump standing on and whom he fights against. So that has, this is not out in the open. Trump used to call it a deep state, right? Deep state is a wrong concept because state implies there is an organized institution that that follows the rules and makes rules. Deep state is really behind the scenes, so it's not really a state. It is the group of powerful interests. Okay, I would say that. So I think that term is a misnomer, but he coined it during his first term, and he still refers to it today sometime. Why is it important now? So it's important because when we fast forward to 70s, we see warming relationship with China. There was so-called ping-pong diplomacy, where Chinese team and those who watch like movies watched Forrest Gump, where he was part of the United States team going against Chinese, followed by Kissinger, who was either Secretary of State or he was National Security Advisor at the time. He made numerous China visits, and then of course Nixon visited Chairman Mao Zedong himself. And from the records, I believe they had a very nice meeting that went well, which participated, and now I'm fasting forward to late 70s, the trade agreement, which finalized the status of People's Republic of China, because before it was Taiwan, right? So in the United Nations theater, you have People's Republic of China coming in lieu of Taiwan. So Taiwan is very sour about this to this day. And you also have, by the early 1980s, you have the special economic trade zones designed to do what we see today. It slowly became a manufacturing powerhouse that is dependent, that we're dependent today pretty much on everything. I was at the, last time I went to see my barber, I asked him, do you have anything here that's made in the United States? Scissors, mirrors, anything? He said no. Pretty much everything was made in China. So it can be a national security problem, and but it took roots back then, back in the 70s. It took, of course, roots under the guise of whatever took place in Chile, right? We want to have China is kind of like the divide and rule rubric, right? We want to move China away from the Soviet Union, which the Soviet Union did have very bad relationship at the time with China, and there was even armed conflict at some areas of the river. So the United States thinking specifically Kissinger thinking that this is a good thing to do for the country because we kind of move China toward us to make sure that the Soviet Union does not spread its evil communism. Yeah, everyone is laughing, right? But this.
Well, that was the idea.
Yeah. But that was the idea. But it was that rubric also coincided with the international trade, and the international trade, what we see today, is a direct result of those policies. Maybe not because of, but maybe it is possible in spite of that situation. Going back to home front, economic picture is not very pretty. 1970s, 80s, you have the phenomenon called stagflation. Stagflation is when you have high unemployment rate plus high rate of inflation. Usually, before late 70s, 1980s, you had one versus the other, and you could balance them off. Not anymore. And one part of it is the inflation result is really because of that huge volumes of United States dollar being around the world, returning among other things. Unemployment was a result of offshoring, of the process that started in the 70s and continued and picked up its pace to really to this day, right? So one of the platforms of why Trump was so successful, I think, is to make America great again, right? What's great again? Great again when it owned more than 50% of GDP, when it was an industrial powerhouse, around 1950s, right after the World War II. So.
That was before steel left Pittsburgh for Japan, and cars left Detroit.
Exactly, Rust Belt. It's very sad.
My kid in junior high studied this for a while, and he said to me, he said, "Dad, the only thing this country manufactures now is debt."
That goes to the point of Paul Walker. So Paul Walker, he was an architect of what became known to economics 101 students as Reaganomics. Dominant economist of the time before Reaganomics. But Reaganomics was supply side, so it focused on deregulation. It focused on having. I have it written down here. It's tax cuts, deregulation, reduced government spending, tight monetary policy to control inflation. So I remember when I used to run queries for interest rate for customs through ABI, Automated Broker Interface. You can see interest rates almost nearing 20%, 1981, 1982. but what part of that deregulation was the deregulation in financial sector, and that caused the public debt, especially consumer debt, of the regular households to spiral. I have a statistics here that back, let me see, in debt to disposable income ratio more than double from 60% in 1980 to 133% in 2007, right before the bubble burst. And those folks, when I just graduated law school, I kind of like was a little romantic, so I did some pro bono stuff in a consumer, I think it was Clara, the consumer credit section here in Queens County Civil Court. And when I'm looking at the lawyers over there, I think of them as very romantic people, because they are working, trying to correct something, doing the best to help out those, because of the hospital bills, because of credit card payments. They're trying to help them something which was set in stone by the policies of Paul Walker. Paul Walker, he was a Fed chairman at the time, succeeded by Greenspan, succeeded by Bernanke and by Yellen thereafter. So that was a calamity. Unemployment obviously was because of the deindustrialization that came in and continues to this day. And one of the things that is possible why Trump also won election, yes, he ran on a platform of Make America Great Again, but also the folks who are making very important decisions in this country. They probably looked at the situation on the ground and they said, listen, another 10 years like this and we have nothing left. We have no industry left. We need to do something. We may not be able to make it perfect, but because United States represents kind of like a platform for the powerful groups to exist, right? Because it's a geographical region. Without that platform, they will lose their status, and this is something that I think many of them are not willing to do. So that may be another reason why Trump, why all of a sudden Elon Musk came in, which was a huge help, I think, in Trump re-election policy, and a lot of support to a man who almost went to jail for various stuff, but simply because of that, simply because a lot of people looked at the situation, rich and poor, and they say if it continues, we're gonna have nothing left. So it's very pragmatic. So Trump comes in. So fast forward to today, Trump comes into the office and he says we must do something. So he issues this memo the day before he he was inaugurated, and he says, look, let's issue executive order. Let's do some trade imbalances adjustment, because if yes, it's gonna be a shaky road, it's gonna be a bumpy ride, but we gotta start somewhere. And those folks who remembered Trump's first presidency, they do remember negotiations in China. He toughens up, starting very, very high demands, and then they would come down, come up, come down, essentially striking somewhere in the middle. And those folks who are in charge of running businesses, this is something when they see 145% tariffs all of a sudden out of the blue, they should not take it to heart. This is just part of negotiation of a long-term strategy. It is also part of, it is also a reflection of United States understanding that it is can no longer support the whole world anymore. It's, I believe, United Nations latest report was that the United States had 14% of the GDP, of the world's GDP. So that's 52% at its height, I believe, around turn of last century, right? Down to 14%. That's a dramatic drop.
To 40?
1-4.
1-4.
1-4. And that number also can be shaky because United States GDP is not based on production of goods like it used to be, more than 90% in the 1950s. But it is based on services. And how do you define service? Well, how much do you, many of us are lawyers here, right? How much do you charge for this or for that? Sometimes we even do pro bono, right? We do we produce any service according to United Nations or the economists? No, we don't. It's pro bono, right? But we definitely like to feel that we do some good, at least produce some service to someone. So so that's what Trump administration faced. So they decided to start, and this is how it went down. So February 1st, 2025, Trump decided to start with Mexico and Canada. He did it under the rubric of war on drugs, and that is not to say is not a problem. We have a fentanyl pandemic, which, if anyone rides subway trains, they see all those slogans saying, "Don't do this. There is help available." Some of us who ride public transportation may see people just scratching themselves all the time. Well, this is with the withdrawal symptom related to that synthetic drug. So it's not because the people need help. So that's that's a given. That there was a problem, and there still is a problem. But that also allowed the United States to impose trade restrictions and to let Canada and Mexico know that, listen, let's talk about trade. So 25% on Canada and Mexico, and 10% on top of everything else on People's Republic of China. So that's a start. For those who watch the news, probably saw the outrage of Canadians. Yeah. Outrage of Sheinbaum, the president, the lady of Mexico, right? How can this be? We're neighbors. So a few days later, Trump says, "Okay, let's take a briefer," right? So on 2/3, Trump issues executive order on February 3rd, pausing it until March 4th, 2025, and to see how it goes. So it paused 25% both on Canada and on Mexico as well. It also did something interesting with a provision called de minimis. This is a very interesting concept going back to Obama administration. 2015, right before Obama left office, he signed Trade Facilitation and Trade Enforcement Act, which implemented under the rubric of e-commerce, because Obama was free trader. His child were TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, and Transatlantic Partnership. For whatever reasons, there were many critics on both sides of the aisle, Democrats and Republicans. But when Trump came in, he pretty much killed the deal. But Obama did sign TIFTA, the code TIFTA, and TIFTA increased what's called de minimis level of duty-free importation from $200 to $800 per item per person per day. and that was done under the e-commerce. We want small people to prosper. We want to be able to march proudly in the 21st century with the technology and electronics. So those of you who like to watch Super Bowl, many probably watch for commercials, not for the game itself. During the commercial break, you may have come around a company called Timu with the slogan "Shop like a billionaire." So, what's Timu and what is the embodiment behind it? So, Timu is as close as it can be to taking advantage of TFT, de minimis provision, by putting together and organizing the supply chain of small de minimis provisions for something like, let's say, I would like anything from the clothing to household goods, mostly the items that people use every day, right? You order it and it comes from China, usually by plane, and they've been able to consolidate the shipment, but they also been able to deconsolidate the shipment once it arrives to the United States. Timu, which is a Boston registered, Timu Incorporated, it's in Boston, right? Controlled by Chinese, but really the infrastructure it stands behind for is amazing because it relies on many freight forwarders. Freight forwarders receive the shipment in the warehouse. Then they deconsolidate it. They already have pre-shipped labels like UPS, USPS, FedEx. They put the labels on and pass it on down the supply chain, so the actual person gets it later on. The problem is because it's de minimis, it stays under the radar for a lot of regulatory provisions. So I was kind of bad, right? But I was doing investigation because of the customs situation related to Timu merchandise, and I decided to do a sample order of the laser pointer. Usually, if you and it's a cheap device, maybe like $5. I did get it, but the thing is that it requires because it is a laser, it requires FDA compliance, and there was no FDA compliance stated on it. It went under the radar simply because it permitted the on that minimum order to bypass that regulatory screen, which would otherwise would not be able to overcome. Customs weren't happy about it, so they did respond with what's called Type 86 entry prototype. Type 86 entry required participants to declare more data for those smalls than it would normally be, but it's still not enough. So Trump, or Trump's advisors rather, they saw what's happening. So under the cover, those corporate factions, right, those organized businesses, they were able to utilize, and most of them are based in People's Republic of China, were able to utilize this provision to dominate the trade, almost rivaling Amazon. And they go out in the Super Bowl commercials and say, "Shop like a billionaire," which is kind of nice, especially because a lot of people here do not have well-paid manufacturing jobs, and they would like to feel good about whatever they buy. So Trump decided to at least with respect to China, he used Executive Order International Economic Emergency Powers Act, IEPA. He stopped the de minimis provision for China, at least. So no more. Yeah.
So I have a question. Was the de minimis
800.
a provision, was that passed by law or was that an executive order also?
So Obama signed the law, which was passed by Congress.
Okay.
2015, Trade Facilitation and Trade Enforcement Act.
So it was a past act.
So it was passed act signed by Barack Obama, which was single-handedly through executive order for China only, but well, they did it with respect to Canada and Mexico as a test too, but with China only, you are not able to bring de minimis duty-free from China.
So then, what, as a customs and trade lawyer, what is your thought on the legality, or like, is that gonna stay? Is that gonna stick, that executive order? Because executive orders can try to change all kinds of laws, but.
Yes. Yes, I thought about it.
Yeah.
It would be a good constitutional law final exam question.
Yeah.
Where you can argue both sides, because
Right.
International Emergency Economic Powers Act
Right.
was also was kind of like in the twilight zone for a long time, because it was set by Congress in I think 78 to 79. Then it was allowed to expire until it was reenacted back in 2018. So, in other words, you can the Trump's argument, Trump administration argument is, well, there is an emergency,
Right.
and Congress authorized me to act as an emergency president
Right.
because of this type of calamity that disbalances our trade. And this is his argument, which if I'm speaking to a customs agent, trying to clear de minimis from China today, and I will try to make that argument, he will look at me like I'm some kind of person from Mars. It's not gonna fly. I wouldn't. Obviously, this can be, and it may be litigated, but right now there was a litigation challenging Trump, I believe, Section 301 tariffs, which relate to, I believe, Trump passed those tariffs in his first administration under rubric of China is still intellectual property. And it didn't go well. Courts are very conservative in this. They, at least as far as trade, international trade is concerned, courts usually tend to defer to the executive branch of the government, and that's why I do receive the phone calls asking what do we do in this landscape. We can't import small stuff. We can't import big stuff. We do not know what to do.
Well, I read something interesting from China's social media. So how they deal with the import-export tariff is like they used to just export goods from China, right? So you tax on that goods. But now they divide that goods into different pieces. So they charge a price for the IP license of the goods, and then lower the price of the good itself. So the tariff is actually on just on part of the good. It's not what you think.
There's many creative ways to go about valuation, and this goes to another area of law, which is valuation within customs. It may. So the question here is intellectual property part of the cost?
Yeah.
And depending on the structure of the agreement, it may or may not be.
So right now it's not.
There is no default for that. You have to do it like you have to look at the agreement, because so customs valuation is under Part 152, 19 CFR. They say, okay, you have to go with 4 methods of valuation. There's 5 methods really, but there's really 4 that are basics, right? One is the transaction value, which is price actually payable. And then it includes cost of packing, may include, for example, royalties, depending on the agreement, may include foreign inland trade, freight cost, depending on the agreement, if it's FOB or X works.
When you say agreement, you're meaning the trade agreement?
No, agreement like a contract between you and I.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is how much do we pay for a particular product? Because one of the ways to lower duty is lower the price, right? So that may be something, but also you have to, can you do it with a straight face? And sometimes you can't. I've seen investigation that where the factory declared $3 per windbreaker, which is usually sold for 85. I say, okay, explain. The customs went with the audit and they say, explain to us how you got that $3. They couldn't, because some things you just can't do, right? So that's valuation portion. So the next one is transaction value of the identical merchandise. So blue pen, red pen. Then similar merchandise like pen and a pencil. Then deductive value, meaning like let's say we bring flowers from consignment. Flowers go down, so they get deducted. And computed value, which is factory ground up. And then other value if nothing, but usually by then you can, and you have to go in that order. The rule is called transfer pricing sometimes too, right? It's a whole other area, but going back to the Trump administration, this is something that they are completely aware, and this is what they did with respect to Canada and Mexico. They eventually, and I'm running ahead a little bit, but they eventually backed down from. So they put a pause on February 3rd, right? Then on March 6th, so 1 month, 2005. So Trump signs an executive order restoring duty-free, meaning no fentanyl tariffs, right? Duty-free treatment, preferential treatment to Canada and Mexico on a condition that it fits that previous trade agreement. So in other words, when you bring something into the country, you have country of origin concept, right? But then there is also country of origin concept, generally speaking, and there is country of origin concept for the trade preferential duty rate purposes. So it can get very complex, such as in the case of automotive products, or it can be less complex, where you have like plastic items, right? Was the plastic blank was it transformed to a cup or not? So and they do it by the tariff shift provisions.
Wait, I have a question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I have lots of questions, but who determines those things, those parts of the rules, like whether it was transformed? Is it on your honor, like the company saying this is what it is, or is it like ripped open and looked at?
Yeah, so responsibility falls on the person nicely known as importer of record. Importer of record is a person who takes primary responsibility for the importation of merchandise. It can be the ultimate beneficiary, or it can be just a transit, but that's the person who is responsible for it all. That person is responsible for the determination. Now, what if they are not sure? Well, just here in New York City, there is in a federal building, we have a whole floor which is occupied by national commodity import specialists from the United States Customs and Border Protection. All they do is determine stuff like this. It's a free service. It's called a binding ruling, where they say
What's it called?
binding ruling.
Binding ruling.
Yes. where they say this qualifies under free trade agreement, this doesn't under the facts provided.
Interesting.
And you write a letter, and it's binding, meaning that once you get that letter, you give it to whatever customs port it comes in, and the port must go with it. They're bound. Of course, unless it's revoked, right?
Right.
But yeah, so what you see is a trend under the tariff. So we're in March. So started. He came in January. Started in February. Started imposing the 25% tariffs on Mexico, Canada. Then took back, kept 10% on China, and eliminated de minimis, but generally speaking implemented on wide variety of goods. And said, look, we're gonna back down, but you better make sure it's made in, if you say it's made in Canada, you better make sure it is made in Canada. What's the general fear? The fact of transshipment. Because a lot of individuals and organizations, they say, okay, China doesn't look like a good choice anymore. Let's set up a shop in Quebec, and we're just gonna staple made in
Quebec.
Canada. You have to say made in Canada.
Right.
I don't think you can
Quebec's
say
not
that.
separate.
Yes. But is it really made in Canada? That's the big question. So this is what they are afraid of. And during that month, I think what took place was Trump administration really drove point home. You cannot become a transshipment point for the Chinese products, because that's what they're gonna do. They learned that from the de minimis provisions, where under the e-commerce rubric it was flooded with duty-free goods of questionable compliance. Now they're afraid of that. So obviously the suspension played its role. So for whatever reasons, Trump administration decided to suspend it, and tougher restrictions, right? You have to still comply with the trade agreement rubric, not general country of origin rubric, which is more tough because it goes to the product specifics. Still, the United States enjoy, or Canada, Mexico enjoy this preferential type of agreement. Now there are issues with other sectors, right? There is aluminum tariffs, there is steel tariffs, there is other issues. I'm just talking about the steps that Trump administration is taking place with respect to its moves of correct disbalances. So March 6th, it moved away from 25% tariffs. It restored the normal trade relations, and customs. You also see. So the way the customs operates. So President Trump comes out and he either signs executive order. Sometimes he comes out in a press conference, and maybe some of you saw he comes out with this big board and this is what's fair, and this is fair as of tonight, right? So you could see customs implementation of this was they had a lag like few days, 3 days maybe, but they figured it out how to do it well. So the same day they come out with they sign what they do. They sign new, usually Chapter 99, which is a specialty provision for that purpose, tariff code, according to whatever Trump said. It can be a memo, it can be executive order, but they say, okay, starting in a few hours, this is what you have to use when you declare your goods. Obviously, it drives a lot of people crazy, because how can you have purchase orders, you probably have production cycles. If you have stuff coming into the country, you have few hour notice of the change. And this is something which makes a lot of people nervous. But why do we talk about history? Why did we start out with the history? We started out because this is going to pass. It's gonna go like this, and we're gonna stabilize somewhere. What we do see from so far into the March negotiations is that China used as a kind of like a evil empire now but we do see that its own backyard, Canada and Mexico, United States wants to keep simply because it may, well, not simply, right, but I think it is because those are the neighbors, and they want to have, they cannot control the whole world anymore, but those guys, they can maintain within the scope of economic influence, which would be very helpful because it's a northern hemisphere. So, fast forward to April. So we're in April now. April 2nd, Donald Trump. So before that, right? So February, March, it was about fentanyl, right? It was about pandemic. With China, it applied because it produces precursors to allegedly to cartels. Because it has a very robust pharmaceutical sector, and because of that, China produces precursors which are being shipped to Mexico, to Canada, and they produce drugs which are later distributed in the United States. So basically, Trump did that, but now he went with the reciprocals. So also same idea, emergency, IEPA, International Economic Emergency Powers Act. He introduces, that was the one he famously held up, this was fair. And for China it was 34%. For everyone across the board it was 10%. Except for, of course, Canada and Mexico, because they get that specialized treatment. And there was a bunch of other countries, including the Annex, which have higher rates. Those are the countries you saw the Trump on the board. But China, 34%. China, of course, administration wasn't happy about it. So Trump said pretty much, well, yeah, how dare you? So 6 days later, on April 4th, he says 84%. All right. China said something, how dare you too? So on April 9th, 125%. This is on top of the fentanyl tariff, which was 10%, and later on became 20%. This is why, and that's in addition to whatever other percentages one has to pay for whatever reasons, be it anti-dumping, be it the regular tariff. So this is already stackable on top of whatever one has to pay. So he gives 125 to China for them daring to question Trump's policy, and he suspends that special annex treatment for other countries. So, like, I think Vietnam was 30-something, South Korea was like 20-something%. He says, okay, that's suspended for 90 days. We'll let you talk to us later on. And but he left 10% for everyone across the board. That stays. So, in other words, if you see consistency, right? He goes up and then backs down. He goes up, backs down. When people saw 145% applied to China, that was a little bit too much. But you really have to see beyond that, because this is pretty much on what you see the wheels of commerce basically coming to a stop. Customs brokers stop paying duties for their clients. They say now you have to pay this tariff because I'm not fronting you my money, because they usually would front and then would bill. So as I spoke with the lady, the National Commerce National Center that is responsible for processing. So now if it's an importer, you have to go to customs to apply for ACH statement, so you can pay it yourself directly out of your bank account. And the stuff is on the border. you have very limited window to clear it. You have 15 days from the time it hits, 15 calendar days from the time it hits to clear it. If you declare it, then you have additional 10 business days to pay the duties. So
And if not,
it goes to the hell house known as GO, General Order, where the fees are so high for storage that you better auction it off and just forget about it.
storage wars. It's in that TV show.
No, it's worse than that. It's more expensive. So you have. So I'm calling up. Like, listen, we need to pay duties right now because broker is afraid, and she does it for the whole country. And she says, "You think you are the only one? That will have 2,000 other people in front of you." That was maybe 2 weeks ago, give or take. So that just and I could sense that unease and nervousness in her voice too, because the people who deal with this, they just cannot grasp it. They are not used to this. It makes them very, very nervous. So in light of this, negotiations continue, right? The Trump roller coaster continues. So the last thing that he's done, Donald Trump has done, was on May 12, 2025. He backed down from that 125%. As expected with any other countries, it went down to 10%. For now, because he suspended it for 90 days. So now we're back to where we are. So to conclude really the situation with the story about what's going on with Trump and how it's going to be, we see Trump administration trying really hard to do what it thinks is best by reboosting the industrial or manufacturing jobs here. The Trump tariffs is a tool for that. And also Trump tariffs is, as we saw, is not answer to everything because we have financial side to this too. Janet Yellen, she is a former Secretary of Commerce under Biden and Federal Reserve Chairman under Obama. So now she's a private person, but in that capacity, she said, "This is a dream." She said it right up front. So it just gives you the highest official says the manufacturing jobs coming back is a dream.
Right.
And she knows something that a lot of people are not being told.
It's a delusion.
It's,
A dream is like aspirational, like.
well, you also have to understand that she represents the financial part, where Trump is fighting for the real sector, not the financial sector too, which is oil, and you can see a lot of issues that are taking pro-oil type orientation. He tried to use all the tools in his box to restart it, but he also faces a lot of opposition from the other factions to say, look, we don't believe, we disagree, and we'll see. We think you are living a dream, using the words of Janet Yellen.
And that's distinct from the high ball, low ball, dance to a middle ground style of negotiation. Might he be better off and achieve his goals with a different style of negotiation rather than these large brackets, rather than be more reasonable and put it in the ballpark?
Well, here, and this is a conversation I have with a lot of people who do imports. They don't look at CNN, don't look at Fox News. This is just stuff that like a tip of iceberg that focuses on what you see. You do not see what goes behind the scenes, but what we see is a trend. And the trend is, it's very difficult after almost 40 years of the policies of offshoring manufacturing.
Right.
And moving toward the financial sector of where you have bankers, for example, almost making most of the decisions in this country. By way, even I think there is this coin term, banking socialism, something like that, after the housing bubble in 2008. So you definitely have those elites in the banking sector who are not accustomed to the idea that they need to change whatever their lifestyle is. And many of those bankers, they are not of generation of Paul Walker. They're not of generation of Nixon, because of the life cycle, how they grew up in administrations of Alan Greenspan, of liberal economics, where you have free reign, and this is normal. And the idea of you sacrificing your lifestyle, sacrificing your profit, sacrificing your position is something that they will be naturally opposed to. That's correct. But at the end, if you sit in front of an individual, say, okay, I have to supply, I have inventories I need to supply. No one makes this outside of China, or if they make it, it's unreasonable prices. In the United States, I cannot make it because the cost is too high. I either close down the business or I have to figure something out. And usually with this type of people, the dialogue is not like, oh, this is a negotiation strategy. To them, this is their livelihood. This is the jobs, essentially the jobs on which people rely on, whatever they are. They are not high-paid manufacturing jobs; they are service jobs, but still. So with these people, it's usually constructive to have a dialogue of seeing, okay, this is the trend so far. You see, China maybe. It most likely will go up. It came down to 10, but it most likely will go up simply because Trump administration realized that we are so dependent on China. It's almost like an addiction. So some things will continue, but as long as Trump administration can be fulfilling in its Make America Great policy again, what they do is they usually, what we see is a trend of focusing on North America, on Mexico and Canada. So that is likely to be, that is likely to remain, simply because of geographic and political relationship and trade relationship that has been for a long time. With China, it's something. If you focus on China for a long term, you would have to maybe develop a strategy. So, for example, they have. Well, besides intellectual property, I have an example where we have a paper pulp producer where they make paper here in the United States, and they do coating in China, and they able to subtract the cost of US product under the new tariffs. So they only pay for coating. And that achieves both United States policies of supporting the local manufacturing in the case of paper mill factories, as well as it gives something to China as well, because coating in the United States is just dramatically high.
So
So yeah,
Not to interrupt, it's fascinating, but we do have 8 p.m. hard stop, so.
alright, so yeah, I went a little bit over it.
No,
Zara,
that's okay, that was
you
fascinating.
should have told me.
Well, I was really fascinated. Yeah, usually we don't go so long, but it was, that was it. Do you have any closing remarks, like maybe about,
Yeah, closing remarks, don't panic.
don't panic? I like it, I like that.
Easier said.
It will work out. There is a lot of ways to diversify your production, and the folks who are looking at the long-term trend and are not dependent on, are not succumbing to the panicky moods of the day which prevail in the international trade today a lot. They usually are better off because they're able to say, okay, yes, we'll bite a bullet today, but this is not the end of the business. This is something that will happen tomorrow. We will live another day, and it will be probably more expensive, but it will not be so prohibitive where you will just have to close down and crawl to the graveyard.
All right,
Bravo.
that's why we wanted an expert to come tell us what was going on. Thank you so much, Yuri. Your clients are lucky to have you in this trying time.
Yeah, what I didn't say is a lot of my after Trump took office, there is a duty-free provision for healthcare products, and a lot of healthcare. If you make there is a special provision, irrespective of that stuff, you can still apply for duty-free. So wheelchairs, for example, they're duty-free. Some
Like exceptions.
yes, and those exceptions have not been affected, but you have to fulfill it by going through a lot of compliance issues. It takes compliance, but at the end of the day, you're able to claim duty-free provision. So a lot of healthcare people, they kind of did the research, and they reach out to people like me, to others, and say, listen, can we apply for what they call Nairobi protocol? Can we apply for Nairobi? Can we use a Nairobi? And a lot of them can. So healthcare people, from what I see, they got out of it through Nairobi.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Are there other industries that get exemptions?
I think automotive has exemption. I'm not automotive specialist, but there is a lot of automotive favorable stuff. Computerized, like cheap semiconductors, those stuff, because it's so vital.
How about automotive batteries? The batteries for cars.
Batteries?
Yeah,
Which batteries?
from automotive.
Hmm?
From automotive.
Automotive, the
Car.
car
The
batteries.
car batteries.
No, I don't think so. It's from China?
Yeah.
No. I did batteries for Nairobi, for the wheelchairs. And the conversation with the customs agent was, I can use that battery to drive my marine boat. It's a flow of electrons. And the winning point was, okay, so you drive a car, it uses a battery, right? Lead acid battery, for example. You go to the auto zone of Pet Boys or whatever auto supply store, you come in and you just say, you want a battery? The answer is no. You tell them, at the very least, they're gonna ask you the make, model, and the specialization for that particular battery for your car. That means that you can't just buy a battery. They also just battery. Here's a battery. No, what's the make and model?
Right.
And sometimes they don't have it. Like I have a Fiat. I go to AutoZone. They don't have Napa. They didn't have a Fiat. They gave me the Mercedes battery. They say it's just the same, you know. And right now I use Mercedes battery for my Fiat.
Interesting.
So he said, oh yeah, that makes sense. Is it the same thing for the healthcare? I'm like, yeah, it is.
Right.
Of course, you have to provide documents for that, but eventually, you know, that's how I got duty free for the battery. So
You're right, we should have scheduled for like 3 hours, that was amazing.
Thank you.
I'm so
Yeah.
glad
well,
we got
thank you.
that on video.
Thank you for Yeah, thank you for,
And your
for
knowledge.
surviving my torture.
No, it was really fascinating, especially the historical context. That was, I definitely wasn't thinking about it.